Good afternoon. I'm your host, Danielle Palli with Birdland MediaWorks, and today we're very excited to be speaking with filmmaker Sky Bergman. Sky Bergman produced, directed, and filmed the award-winning documentary Lives Well Lived. Sky is currently a professor of photography and video in art and design at Palli State University, and a photographer whose work has been exhibited and published extensively both nationally and internationally. Sky, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Oh, I'm really excited. I am having a geek moment because I saw the film and I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. So,
that's very kind.
The topic today is about following your career passion. Now, mythologist and lecturer Joseph Campbell said, "Follow your bliss and the universe will open doors for you where there were only walls." Sky, do you agree with that sentiment?
Oh, I absolutely agree with that. I was actually a business major undergraduate, and I took a photography class for fun and fell in love with it at the time and said to my photo teacher, I want to be a university professor and I want your job. I want to be able to teach photography. And at that moment, I really was following my bliss. And I have continued to do that throughout my career and throughout my life. And it has led me into some very unexpected career paths, like making a feature-length film or being able to teach photography at a university. But for me, following my bliss, the doors have opened. Now, it's been, as one of the people in my film said, luck has the aroma of perspiration. So it's not been without a lot of hard work. But I think that I never wavered from what my idea was of what I wanted to do with my life.
Sky, for those who may not have seen the film yet, can you tell us a little more about Lives Well Lived?
Sure. I'll begin at the beginning, which is with my grandmother, who at 99 years old was still going to the gym and working out. And I thought I'd better film her doing this because no one's going to believe that at the age of 99, she's still lifting weights and going to the gym. And I asked her for a few words of wisdom. And that was kind of the beginning of the whole project. I realized that I wanted to do something, I didn't know it was going to be a film, around other people that were as much an inspiration as my grandmother was to me. And so I sent out an email blast to all my friends and family and alum from where I teach. And I said, if you have somebody in your life that's as much an inspiration as my grandmother is to me, please nominate them for this project. And 40 interviews later, it's been quite an interesting ride, and I've met some just amazing people along the way.
So in getting back to talking about following your career passion, I remember when I was graduating from high school, one of my classmates telling me that she'd read a study that predicted that our generation would likely have an average of 5 different career paths. Careers, not jobs within the same field within a lifetime. That seemed impossible to me, knowing that most parents and grandparents I knew had only one career throughout their lives, and it was one they were born into because of a family business or tradition. We touched on it a little bit, but can you talk a little more about your own experience with these different career paths?
Sure. I think that for me, I was very good with numbers when I was an undergraduate, and that's kind of why I picked finance, because I thought, well, I'll go into this career path. And when I discovered photography, at first I thought, well, I'll make a lot of money and I'll take time off and be a photographer. And then at a certain point, I realized that I probably would never follow what my passion was if I just didn't do it, and that I could not do anything because of money, because of finances, that I should never let money stand in the way of what my passion was. And so that was just making that decision and following that career path. Now, I've been really lucky because as a teacher, my mom says that I found the perfect profession because when you're a teacher, you're a professional student. So I have really been lucky and fortunate that in a way I've had this one career path that has let me explore so many different things, including becoming a filmmaker, because that's now what I teach. Yeah. So I'm practicing what I teach. But I also, along the way, did photo shoots for Smithsonian Magazine, did book covers for Random House. So I did a wide variety of different things, all kind of within the same genre, but never being afraid to try something new. And I think that was the important thing, was I wasn't afraid to jump off a cliff. I was more afraid of being really boring and dull and not trying than of trying and failing. And if I succeeded, more the better, but at least I wanted to try.
That's a good attitude to have. I know, in talking to other colleagues, sometimes they're asked to do something and they say, well, I don't have any experience with that. I've always said, well, I don't have experience with that, but I'll give it a try. If you're willing to work with me, I'll try it. And it's having that led you to do this amazing documentary. In Lives Well Lived, the older adults you interviewed, they all seem to live very purpose-filled lives. Can you tell us how your interaction with these men and women have inspired you and influenced you on your own journey, both personally and professionally?
Well, that's a very good question. I think that they've definitely changed my life in so many different ways because they've all lived through such great challenges in their lifetimes, but yet they still remain so incredibly positive. And hearing their stories and really knowing these people, now I've become very good friends with most of the people that I've interviewed. In fact, I'm having dinner with Dr. Lou Tadone tonight, and he's the guy that makes the mozzarellas in the beginning of the movie. And he's in his 90s. He's going to be 94 at the end of this month. But they all had to overcome obstacles. And I think one of the poignant things that he said, which really has stuck with me, is that happiness is a state of mind. You can be happy with what you have or miserable with what you don't have. You decide. And so there are days, as we all have these days, where I might get up on the wrong side of the bed and be a little grouchy. And then I think of him and I think of that statement, and it really changes my focus for the day and changes how I'm feeling. So I think in that regard, that's both personally and professionally, because that's who I am in both of those instances, is that I can change my attitude and make an experience much more positive, because I think of all these people in the film and the things that they went through and how they survived through those things. And my problems seem incredibly minor compared to what they went through. So it really just puts things into a different kind of perspective. And I think that that's very helpful.
It is a great perspective. And I know I was watching some of these stories, and right, anytime you complain about, being tired or working too hard, and you see what they went through, and you're like, you know what, I've got it easy. And a lot of these men and women paved the path so that we could live the life we live.
Absolutely.
So what advice would you give someone who maybe feels stuck in a career that doesn't bring them joy and is looking for a change, but they may or may not know what's meaningful to them? So in other words, one person might know what they want, but not sure how to get there, and somebody else might not really know what they want.
Well, I think one of the things that a professor of mine, Richard Ross, had me do when I was in graduate school, had all of us do, was write out our goals for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years. And I think maybe even 20 years. Yeah, it was 20 years. I make my students do that as well, because I think that you have to set goals for yourself. If you don't have goals, then how can you possibly achieve them? And so I think looking farther out and knowing where do you want to be in your life. So not just professionally, but personally. Like for me, I was a travel photographer for a long period of time. So what did that mean in terms of what kind of relationship I was going to have, and who that person that I was going to be with, how did they want to travel? And, looking at those kind of things, I think is very important to make yourself not feel stuck, so that you have some sense of where you want to go. And I think, people make dream boards. I think that's a good way to do it. Dream big. Doing a film, I dreamed very big, never did anything like that before. And I think it could get very overwhelming very quickly, but I will dream big and then break it down into smaller chunks where I know I can achieve this smaller goal that takes me to the next level. And then finally, after a lot of really small goals, I achieve the big goal. And so I think breaking things down into smaller bits makes that big, humongous goal not seem so insurmountable. It makes it seem like it's possible.
That is great advice, and some of the things that I took years to figure out for myself, and it's great that you're giving it to your students now, because I remember doing that same exercise, and my 10-year goal, I was already going to have written 10 books and traveled around the world 10 times, and neither of those things have happened. And now today, here's what I want to do in the next 5 years, but okay, what's going to get my toe in the water? Versus what's going to get me to the end game. And then I also know people who they see the end game and then they panic. They're like, how can I get there? So I like the idea of the small pieces that kind of lead up to the bigger goal.
Right. And I think there's also, as one of our alums said when he was critiquing one of the portfolios this past spring, and it really stuck with me. He said, you can have an idea, like an idea that you want to do something, but setting an intention, like I will do this by this date, there's a difference there. When you just have an idea, it can stay an idea forever. But when you set an intention for yourself of, I'm going to make this happen by this date, that's a really different level of commitment. And the other thing that I tell my students, which I think is a good thing, and I have somebody that I use is find somebody who can be your, what I call accountability partner.
Yep.
So that you kind of set these goals, and every once in a while you check in with each other to say, hey, how are you doing with that? Because it's sort of like going to the gym. If you know you're supposed to meet somebody there, you're probably going to get your butt there at the time that you say you're going to meet them there. But if you just say, oh yeah, maybe I'll see you, then you probably aren't going to wake up and go unless you're highly motivated. So setting that intention and also having somebody that you're accountable to are two really good ways to help foster that and make those things happen.
I think you have a separate career if you want another one as a career counselor, because that's all really great advice. So on your own path, what's next for you?
I have a lot of things that are coming up with the film. I leave next week for the Maine International Film Festival, so that'll be our East Coast premiere in the film festival circuit, which I'm very excited about. And then it's going to screen in upstate New York at the VOB Film Festival, in San Francisco at the Legacy Film Festival for Aging, in Doc, Utah in St. George at the Documentary International Film Festival there, and the Lunenburg Doc Fest in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. That's what I have so far, but there's a lot more iron in the fire, as they say. So there's a lot more coming up, lots more film festivals. And then the film will actually be released theatrically spring of 2018. So that's something
wow, that's
really
fabulous.
fun to look forward to.
Congratulations. Yeah. And you've just answered my question to how I can travel around the world several times in the next few years, just create a film.
Exactly.
Now, do you have another film project that you are even thinking about in the kind of an inkling in the back of your head?
Oh, as a filmmaker, you always have more film projects that are kind of rolling around back there in your mind. And so there's a couple of things that I'm working on. Yeah. But right now, I really want to focus on getting this film out and getting it out there. I want to get it into K through 12 and have younger kids see the movie so that they can do an intergenerational project and interview people that are 75 or older, and just to foster that the film moves beyond just the film and becomes something more than that. And in fact, on the website for the film, which is lives-well-live.com, there's actually a place on there where people can share their stories. So if you know somebody that's remarkable and amazing, you can go to the website and you can actually post their story on the website. So it becomes kind of like a collection zone for really interesting stories about people that are 75 and older.
So why are intergenerational projects so important?
I think it's easy to forget that it's only in the past 100 years or so that people have turned to anyone other than the oldest person they know to solve life's problems. In the past, it used to be your parents or your grandparents, the older generations, that actually grew in status because of their age and experience, and we respected them for their wisdom and recognized them as the keepers of customs and histories and traditions, family secrets. And as people have moved far away from their family members, there's not that same kind of connection. I was lucky. I grew up with my grandparents, so I had that. But most people, I think I'm an anomaly, and I don't think that most people have that connection. And so I would like to have younger people have that interaction with somebody, an older adult in their life, that can tell children, younger adults, what life is like for them and connect them to important historical events by telling them stories about what happened to them. And, stories are the common ground that allow people to communicate and overcome differences, and they allow us to understand ourselves better and to find the commonality with others. So this is shared wisdom that will teach you how to live a better life if you just take the time to listen to their stories and ask them questions.
That is really so important. I remember when my grandmother was alive, I had gone out to lunch with her one day as a teenager, and I had always gotten to see her when there were family get-togethers, but there was never really time to interact. And I remember sitting down with her, and she was talking about accounting and the business she started and all this stuff about her past that I knew nothing about growing up. And I wish I had a tape recorder at the time. That's how long ago it was, or at least a pen and paper to write it down, because I was blown away. And to encourage that, I think that some of this film and interviewing is a lost art. And I told you I was inspired after I saw the film. When family came over, I was driving them nuts. I was following them around with a video camera saying, you'll appreciate this 20 years from now.
That's great. I love it.
So can you give that website one more time so people can stay in touch with you?
Yeah, the website is lives-well-lived.com. Actually, if you go to Google and type in Lives Well Lived, it's the first thing that comes up. And if you want to be on our email newsletter, there's a place on the homepage where you can sign up for that, and you'll find out first about where it's screening and what's happening. And I'm starting to email words of wisdom from all the fabulous film stars that I have interviewed. So you'll get some of that too in your inbox, which is kind of nice.
All right. Well, Sky Bergman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Again, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.